Welcome to Musings from Arledge. I have with me two special guests today. I'm very excited about it. I have teammates from USC back in the late 1980s, Dan Owens and Pat Harlow. Dan, Pat, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris.
So most of you probably know who Dan and Pat are. I certainly do because I was in high school at the time and was a huge USC football fan. These guys were big-time players. Both played on the three straight Rose Bowl teams together. Both were first-team All-Pac-10. Pat won the Morris Trophy for being the top offensive lineman in the conference in 1990. Both had long and productive NFL careers. It's a pleasure to have you guys. All right, listen. First things first. You guys must have gone up against each other quite a bit in college, I'm assuming. So who got the best of it? Who's the better player?
Dan was a pretty damn good player. I hate to admit it. We didn't see each other a lot in college, but he chief shotted me about 50 times in the league. And then I was actually telling my son this story today, so you'll love this, Dan. You probably already know it. But we're getting ready to go down to Atlanta. I'm in Oakland. And so, you really watch those last four games. And so as soon as I knew it was 4 games out, I started cutting everybody. I was just chopping for no reason, just chopping people. And me and Matt Willick had dinner the night before, and he comes to me, he's like, "Hey, Dan thinks you're going to cut him. Like, you think I put all those on tape for no reason?" And he came around on a twist. Shouldn't cut him, but I did. And he's like, "I knew you were going to do that." I'm like, "I know you knew, because I did all that on tape for you."
Yeah, it's funny because Pat played defense his freshman year with me, and then he went to play offensive tackle.
2 years.
Yeah, and then I was a 3-technique nose guard. So really, unless it was a twist or he was blocking down, a lot of times, I really wouldn't go against Pat that often. We did, I think in 93 was the first time in the pros. Detroit went up to Foxborough, and we played the Patriots in 93. I think it was one of the first games of the year, maybe. But it was that was the first time in pros that we got to actually play against each other, in college, besides practicing and going against each other.
Did you cheap shot him?
Absolutely did. Every time there was a turnover, he hunted me down.
Okay, so the rule back then, Warren Sapp got into the whole issue, went national with that. But anytime there was an interception or turnover, it was you would hunt the offensive lineman because it was, you switched roles. They were trying to tackle the ball carrier, and we were going to try to take their heads off. So any kind of turnover, that was the case.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. And by the way, I had Brad Leggett on here a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and Brad was also singing your praises, Dan, talking about how you were the man on that front seven. Which, by the way, for more recent USC fans, you may not realize it, but that front seven in the late '80s was a stellar unit. Dan and Don Gibson and Tim Ryan. Junior Seau, some of you probably heard of him. Scott Ross. I mean, that was a really good defense, really good. Okay, so for most of the last 10 years or so, it's been tough to be a USC football fan. I got a question for you guys. Who did you think USC was going to hire before they hired Lincoln Riley? When you found out it was Lincoln Riley, what'd you think? Dan?
Extremely pleased with that. When I was there, we had Ted Tollner, and it was still TOS 28, the SC student body left, right. And it was the transition to try to get out of that and update the offense was always going to be hard to do. And it kind of happened with Pete Carroll, and then it got changed. But Lincoln Riley, basically recruiting instant accessibility for the recruits to come in and get the players that we need. It's not a talent level in California that's a problem. It's when all the recruits leave California, and he's done a good job so far of keeping a lot of the talent. He had the 1 year, now the second year of recruiting. So very, very pleased. The Cincinnati guy, who was Ohio State guy. I think he's now at Wisconsin. Never felt he was going to come out there. Too much of a Midwest guy. So I really didn't know what was going to happen talent-wise, who we were going to get.
Yeah.
I was hoping for Chris Peterson initially.
Uh-huh.
You know, got to know him pretty well over the years. He recruited my son pretty heavily when he was at Boise. I've been a big fan of his. And so I thought maybe that would be the one job. I thought the SC job would be one job he'd come back for. Obviously Lincoln has done an amazing job. I was lucky enough to go up last spring, and I'd been up there with Clay, and I love Clay as a person. But go up there and just see some physicality and some competitiveness in spring ball, saw it in Indo, and Coach Riley was blessed me to be able to talk to the team. That's the first thing he said. It's fun coming out and watch practice again. See you guys actually compete against each other and push each other. And I know Dan can speak to this. I mean, how many guys off your defense got drafted, Dan? About all of them.
Yeah.
Or at least played in the NFL. And like you had to come ready to practice every single day because we were going to compete and fight and do all those things. So really excited about what Lincoln's doing. And we got to spend 4 hours with Coach Henson the other day. He was super cool and let me come up and just talk ball with him during spring break. He wasn't even there. He came in and so it's really cool to be to see what's going on there and the character and the type of coaches they are.
So he obviously did an amazing job with the first year turnaround from 4 wins to 11. It's hard to complain about that. And as an offensive coach, he probably doesn't have a rival in college football right now, right? I mean, his offenses are consistently good, and he's known for his quarterbacks, but the guy runs the football and has always run the football. I think USC fans look at it and they say, offensively, we feel great about this guy. Question is, can Lincoln Riley build a defense that's good enough to win national titles or compete for national titles? So that's my question for you. And if he is able to do that, what needs to happen to make that happen?
I'll start with that one. And literally, I think he put all his eggs in the offensive basket the first year. There's not a super talented defense that Coach Wrench had to work with. And so I think as they, get into year 2, year 3, year 4, they'll start drawing those defensive guys who want to be part of something really exciting and have a real opportunity to win a national championship. So I think it's more about recruiting. Again, I don't know that the previous couple of staffs did a very good job of really keeping the local guys around. There's a ton of talent in the Southern California area, especially in Northern California, that would love to come down and play at SC. I know with, Dan and I were in school, we had a lot of Northern California guys come down and play. And one of the greats in Marcus Cotton and Dwayne Garner. And there's tons of other guys that came from the Northern California area. So I think as he builds this thing, builds the excitement, that SC is just such a natural draw. I mean, I don't know about Dan, but I got my first letter from SC. I'm like, if they ever offer me, that's where I'm going, and I think SC still has that brand awareness and, the way that they're able to score. And you want to be part of something that's really exciting and fun. And Lincoln's bringing that back in his staff and the players that really bought into him.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. There's a ton of players who've gone to different schools, who chose different, say Washington or Arizona State over USC coming out. And I don't know if that was a decision or they weren't offered by SC, but I think this current coaching staff is going to do a great job of finding the talent that wants to stay here and play here. The 2 guys from Arizona, the receiver, the D lineman, I think there's maybe even a corner that came over.
Yep.
All where this is their dream school. And you look at it as far as the assessment in high school, was it not there, or those players were sleepers and they just grew? But I think the combination of SC for the transfer and a high school kid is going to allow the defense to have the talent to play at a high level.
It's pretty clear at this point that if you want quarterbacks or receivers, it's hard to beat Southern California, right? And everybody comes here to find their quarterbacks. Do you still have the same level of talent when it comes to the offensive and defensive lines that you had back in the mid '80s? Some people wonder about that.
I coach in the Trinity League, so I coach against Mater Dei and Bosco and Orange Lutheran and all those guys. And I go to all these little 5-on-5 deals. There's plenty of talent out here. We just got to do a better job attracting them at SC. Again, especially if you're an offensive or defensive lineman, just about every position at SC, man, there's such history at every position that, I guess the question is, are they afraid of the standard that has been set there? Or they want to just kind of go someplace else and not have such a spotlight on them? Because really, I couldn't tell you one offensive or defensive lineman's name from Clemson or Ohio State, to be quite honest with you. But if you're a really good offensive or defensive lineman at SC, you're a national name, especially kids that want to go and play in the NFL. I just think SC is a no-brainer. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I think as long as you're finding the guys who really want to play and develop, and not just the big body guy who lacks the athletic ability to actually play offensive line, there's enough talent out west. Back in the southeast, there's more guys who have the big size, big bodies, but there's plenty of talent out west that you can field a lot of teams and a lot of depth with the talent they have.
So I got a question for you, Pat, because your time coaching in the Trinity League, high school football in Southern California has changed a lot over the years. You guys were about 5 years ahead of me, and I've kind of got a bone to pick with you anyway, Pat, because you're a Norco guy, and I went to Lake Elsinore High School, and
Go Cougs.
And we almost always got we beat you guys my senior year, but every year before that it was just a beatdown. It used to be that the talent was more spread out. Fontana in the '80s had a bunch of guys that could play, and Mater Dei always had players. Pauley had players, but it seems like these days just about all the players are centered in that one league, with a couple of exceptions, maybe Centennial and Sarah and a couple of other high schools. What do you make of that? Is that good for Southern California high school football, that all the talent's concentrated in one place?
I personally don't like it, but it was funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine, the coaches at Norco, and he was talking to a college coach, and he's like, almost all the home visits we do for the training league guys live in Eastvale, like 70%, which used to be like Norco's territory. It used to be all dairies, and now there's all homes out there. So there's just tons of kids going tons of kids are going everywhere. Like Matt Logan, like he just wakes up and there's a 5-star guy from Rancho Cucamonga or Upland or something shows up at his door. But kids are leaving. The really talented kids are leaving for what they think are better opportunities for educationally, training, facility wise, and all that. It's not unlike college kids when they got all enamored with Oregon's 75 uniforms and no national titles and 3 weight rooms because they scratched the weight. It's kind of what's happened in Southern California. Everybody's looking for those premier programs to go be part of because they think that's the only way they can get recruited now.
Yeah. So you mentioned it's the changes in college football. Obviously, when you guys were playing, you could transfer, but you'd have to sit out a year. And if you transferred in conference, you may have to sit out too. Now it's more of a free for all, and you have the addition of the money, the NIL money, or sometimes it's NIL money, sometimes it's something else. What's your take on that? First of all, how do you feel about it? And then second, what do you think it means for USC over the short term and the long term?
You want to go down?
Yeah, I would say when we were in college, money was hard to find. So I think it's a great opportunity for the kids. There's some pitfalls with getting too much too early and being too young to handle the money. That's always going to be there. But I think it's in the long term, it's a great thing. And I think they're going to be able to become the football player that they want to do and take care of certain family needs if they have that. I think it would have been great if we had it back then when we were in school. We've talked about this as players. Most of us wouldn't have got paid. There was a couple of guys on the team that would have got paid a lot of money. But most of us including me and Pat were probably 3-star recruits. So there's probably not much that we would have ever gotten out of that until maybe our senior year if something happened. But I think it's good for the kids. And going forward, I think it's going to help the sport. It'll become part of the sport, just like SC move into the Big Ten. It's going to be the new thing. But I think it's good.
I'm kind of split on it. You know, I think it's great for the players to have the ability to get some money. You know, I don't know about Dan, but I was having to sell my books at the end of the semester so I could go eat at the 59-cent menu at Taco Bell just to have enough to eat. I think it's great for the players to have that. I guess my biggest deal, just looking at from building a culture, you're constantly getting new guys in, and they might only be there a year, and then they might transfer again. I think that's the hardest part. So I think that's still got to be kind of figured out. You know, hey, I'm all for giving a guy, you know, a free transfer once, but I think when you start doing more than that, I think I look at it from the coaching perspective and the culture perspective. You're constantly having to re-recruit the kids you already recruited, and again, it doesn't take much to really mess up the chemistry of the locker room, and so I think that can be hard. The coaches that are great at it, they'll prosper, you know, and the teams will prosper. But I think that's something to be wary of.
So I got a question about that, the locker room culture. There are some programs that it's pretty clear are offering big dollars to at least the top recruits in order to get them to sign on the dotted line. It's clear that Lincoln Riley is not willing to do that. And I think part of the reason, it sounds like from an interview I saw, is that he's concerned about the locker room culture. I don't think anybody has a problem. I don't think anybody in USC's program has a problem with Caleb Williams making a lot of money, right? I mean, he's worth every cent he makes. But I wonder whether paying a kid fresh out of high school who shows up on campus and hasn't proven anything whether that might lead to problems in the locker room. What do you guys think about that?
Well, so a pro locker room, you have the same dynamics that you're going to have in a college locker room, except they're at a younger age. First round picks, first round bust, first round starters. So my year, the first rounder in 4 years made more in that contract than I did in 10. So the dynamic of that from pro football is now into college. You have to deal with it. I don't think it's a big deal if someone's getting paid more. It's just the opportunity's there for them, or they knew somebody. It could lead to problems, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
I have to agree with Dan. I think that is like you're never mad when, like in the pros, when your buddy goes and gets a big contract. You know, that's good for them. You know, yeah, it'd be great if if they saved a little bit for you. But you know, that's just kind of life. You know, the best players are usually going to get the best treatment. They're going to get the most money in those things. You know, and I think most of those kids, you know, so many kids now just want to play on Sundays. That they're still going to go out and bust their butt and do everything they can to have that opportunity to really make some. Now it's generational wealth. You know, when Dan and I played, trust me, we did much better than the guys before us. But the money that some of these guys are making now is unbelievable.
Yeah. So Pat, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you went back to SC just recently and talked to Coach Henson, saw Coach Riley. I'm curious about how important is it to the program to have the former players involved, and is it important to guys like you, but also is it important to the future success of the program to have the guys who came before still around the program talking to the guys?
I think it's huge. You know, I just remember when I was there, and you know, Kenny Rutgers had come back and talked to you. Roy Foster was working out with you in the off season. Dwayne Pickett, you know, he kind of took me under his wing before I got drafted and kind of, you know, showed me some ropes and that kind of stuff. And like, those are guys, you know, a lot of these kids still probably don't remember Dan and I, but they remember some of the great players that were there. And when they come around, like, you know, I talked to the kids years ago when Clay was there, it kind of ripped them. Like, man, you guys are not upholding the standard that has been set before you. Like you guys like running around and looking good, but you guys aren't playing ball the way that, you know, Dan knows. Leggett has got this text thread every game day. He wakes me up at like 6 a.m. because it's 9 o'clock where he's at, Dan. And, you know, and we're talking about the team and how they're doing. And, you know, it's either we're either really pissed off or we're really happy. And, but I think it's really important. And I think that the kids, you know, I'm blessed in that I have one of the kids I coach plays offensive line there. And, you know, he calls me up and say, hey, you're going to come down. The guys love when you come down and that stuff and just be around. And I think it's huge for us to be wanted to come, you know, where the staff wants you to come around. And I know the players, you know, we lived their dream. You know, we played at USC. A ton of us went on and had really, you know, nice NFL careers and be able to share some of the little knowledge that we have that helped them get to that point or just have a phenomenal college career. It's like Matt Rudiger. I mean, he's one of the best players SC had for a long time. And, you know, he never had a chance in the NFL, but I would think most SC fans know who Matt Rudiger is.
If they don't, they should.
They should, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? You ever get back?
I was back for the Washington State game this year. I try to get back occasionally. I've been to maybe 5 or 6 games. But to Pat's point, when you see like in the locker room, one year we had Marcus Allen came back and was in the training room, locker room, talking to us. Getting recruited, I sat with Ron Yeri before a football game, and that blew my mind because he was in the Hall of Fame and that. And a big point, the 1988 Oklahoma game, when we beat them in the Coliseum, a ton of old guys would coming up, and that's when they're like, that's how you play USC defense. So it was kind of rewarding to see guys you knew, the names you knew, come back and kind of talk to you about how to play USC football.
Yeah. Let's talk about playing USC defense because the offense turned around significantly. I'm gonna talk about the offense in a second. The defense struggled, better at turnovers, causing turnovers, but the defense really struggled, especially in the last couple games. Talent issue, effort issue. What was it?
I would say the DBs played relatively well. The front seven struggled. Either athletically, size-wise, ability. One of the three. They do need to get better players coming up. The system, okay, you got 2 different kinds of systems you can run. You can run a turnover-based system on possessions, so you're only going to get 12, 14 possessions on defense a game. How do you want those to end? Or you can play the bend but don't break defense, catch in front, come up and tackle. So it looked like last year they were going to try to get the turnovers, which they did a good job at. So taking away possessions from the offense. If that's what they're going to do, they have to have a lot of blitz packages, a lot of 0, a lot of 1 coverage. And that may be the identity they become. And it's off and running because the offense is going to give you 35, 45, 50 points a game. So you just have to see what kind of personality you want to have. Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I suppose if you have a good old-fashioned Woody Hayes offense, running the ball off tackle 50 times a game, scoring 21 points, you're going to have a different strategy than if you have a Lincoln Riley offense where most weeks you're going to hit 40 points, right? I mean, and sometimes you're going to score really quickly. And in fact, I had Mark Carrier on about a month ago, and Mark said, yes, sometimes defensively you don't want the guys to score that fast. I mean, it'd be nice to move the ball a little bit down the field and run some clock. I'm curious then, if you're the defensive coordinator at SC and you know that Lincoln Riley's offense is going to be explosive and score a lot of points, what's your strategy? You going to try to keep guys in front? Are you going to aggressively blitz, try to pick the ball off, try to knock it loose? What are you going to do?
As fast as SC's offense is and how many plays are running a game, I'm going to match that tempo on defense with a blitz package and tight coverage, zone dogs getting in the passing lanes, just like the UCLA game where I forget now. I think it was Centennial Corona.
Yeah.
Player intercepted. Yes.
No.
I think that matches the same tempo. And when I was with the Detroit Lions early 90s, we were running shoot and we were playing a don't bend and don't break defense. We'd be on the field for 13, 15 plays. Offense would go out, 3 and out, 3 incompletes. We were right back on the field. That was brutal. And that was early 90s, just like when we played in the 80s. You didn't sub. There was, like, if you started the game, you didn't let your backup in. So now with the ability to rotate 8, 10 defensive linemen, linebackers, DBs, everybody's rolling in and out, I would play the high tempo game and try to get as many turnovers as possible.
What do you think, Pat?
I mean, I agree with Dan. I mean, I would be max. I'd be bringing pressure from everywhere, disguising it, bringing it. You know, but I think, you know, personally, and I was really spoiled, you know, playing at SC with Dan and that defense. That, I mean, they were equally adept at stopping the run as rushing the passer. I mean, Dan and Don and T. Rye and our linebackers, they're phenomenal. Like we were the #1 rush defense in the nation for 3 years, I think. Probably should have been 4. But we could still get after the passer. You know, I mean, Junior Seau's coming, and Dan is probably one of the more underrated pass rushers at SC, especially interior. You know, we were getting to the quarterback still. Obviously, different type of style of game, but I think some of it is a talent level. And you know, I think we need to get better really up front. I think the linebackers are pretty good because the linebackers kind of feed off of what the D line does. So personally, I think we have to have more talent. I mean, it's Tuli Pelotu. You know, if he's your biggest name guy up there, I mean, again, bless his heart, he's had a really good year. But I got to be honest, I don't think he would have played in 1988. That's just just being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, the talent level, Chris, the talent level in 89 was, so for me, you had Tim Ryan and Junior Seau, and it was a race to try to get to the quarterback because you knew one of those two is going to get there. And if you even watch the film, you'll see the letdown when one of those guys got a sack before the celebration because you almost got there and they got the sack instead of you. And it was like you're mad because you didn't get there, but at the same time, your teammate just got a sack and you want to celebrate. So when the talent, to the point of talent, when there's 3, 4, 5 guys that are capable of getting there, your motor, you're going to be way better player because you're forced to get there. And it's not a matter of you didn't get there or pass rush wasn't a good move. It was somebody got there before you got there. And so you were, I mean, every play you knew, hey, someone's going to get there. I got to get there fast as I can get there. No let up. It's on me now. Or, you know, there's Seau getting a sack or Tim Ryan running around with this, you know, hands up, getting a sack. So that leads, the competition leads to better playing, and you get the most out of each player that way.
All right, so I'm going to say something that's going to offend you guys right now. You ready?
Yep.
That 1989 team, and I loved the Rose Bowl win against Michigan. I loved it. That 1989 team should not have had 2 losses and a tie. No way in the world should a team that talented have had 3 games they didn't win.
You're not going to piss us off because we totally agree with you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, the defense, we lost 1 starter, which was Chris Hale. And that was it. I know you know the story. Don Gibson blows out his knee in a 9-7 drill early on. Yeah. And then our quarterback gets hurt. Todd comes in, does a great job. But everybody knows the story. They didn't let Todd throw over 5-10 yards. It was run, pass, run, pass, run. I mean, what people don't know, we blocked a punt to score the touchdown. And then we kicked 2 field goals. If that's 3 or 4 weeks later, that doesn't happen. The other one,
you're talking about the Illinois game, the opener.
The Illinois game, yeah, sorry.
Illinois game.
And by the way, they score on that ridiculous tip pass, ball flies up in the air, and
yeah,
it was an out and up. Trust me, because Jeff George never let me live that down.
Yep.
Every game, anytime somebody was coming like to a game, he's like, "Hey man, you at that SC game?" And he'll still go like this. I can't believe number 9 bid on an out. That's all it says.
Yeah, we were telling he's going to go out and up, out and up. We knew it was coming, and then it just got over the top. But we should have sacked the quarterback anyway. Shouldn't have been able to throw the ball. So it's on the D line, not the DB.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Dan. You mentioned the early 90s and Detroit. What was it like to play with Barry Sanders? I don't think I've ever seen anybody quite like that guy.
So every play, you know, the D line or the O line coach is going to, when you come off the field, they're going to go over the chalkboard, the dry erase board. And they're going to draw plays and show you. At that time, they had pictures, printed copies of the plays. They don't have the video like they do now, but you couldn't concentrate because the crowd wouldn't let you. You'd be sitting there looking at the coach, and then the crowd would go crazy, and then you try to find Barry because you know it was Barry. Barry's did something, some kind of crazy run. You look on the scoreboard. Even our coach would sit there and watch it. But just he was a very good person, easy to talk to. Coming from SC and LA, you knew the Dickerson story. Even though I didn't know him with the Rams, he was kind of above everybody. He was the guy, but Barry was just like everybody else on the team. He wasn't above his teammates.
So I remember being upset in '88 when Barry Sanders won the Heisman, because I figured, of course, Rodney Peete should win this thing. And in those days, it wasn't like today where every game was on television, right? So I had never actually seen Barry Sanders play until the bowl game against Wyoming. And I think I sat through the first quarter and I said, okay, I get it. I can't be upset anymore. I've never seen anybody who can do what that guy does. His ability to start and stop and make people miss, just amazing.
Yeah, he's I would pick him as my top running back. I mean, there's a lot. There's, you know, you can't go wrong with the top 10, but I think he's the best pure running back in the NFL history. You know, the whole Emmett thing. Barry got hit 3 times in 10 years. That's it. He took 3 shots. Other than that, perfectly healthy, nothing wrong. He could have played another 6 years at the same tempo.
All right, let's talk about, I got 2 more things to ask you guys about. I'll start with you, Pat. I want to ask about the offensive line and what you thought about the offensive line's performance last year and what you expect from the group this coming year. My take as a non-offensive lineman is that the offensive line was the one group that played pretty well the year before the disastrous 4-win season. Those guys seem to get better. They played well last year. It's sometimes hard to tell, though, whether or not it's the offensive line or the magic that is Caleb Williams, because he can do so much back there to just make people look silly. What do you think of the offensive line last year? What do you think is going to go on this year with the guys up front?
I was overall really pleased with how they played, you know, and sometimes, you know, you see a quarterback running around back there and extending plays. And sometimes an offensive line, I'm like, man, did you not see that first read? You know, so sometimes, you know, the quarterback misses something and it looks like the O-line's struggling a little bit, but the ball should have been gone. You'll take that, though, because he makes so many plays. When you do get beat, he's helping you out. So that's always exciting. But, you know, overall, I really thought, you know, I'm a big fan of what they did last year. I thought they played tough, you know, Dedich and Nealon are just, and I got to watch Nealon for 4 years at Santa Margarita and knew what kind of kid he was, what kind of player he was, and I was really pleased with how they played as a unit. You know, Bobby with the shoulders popping out worked great for my kid because he got to play a lot. You know, I'd like to see Cortland come back and really be the player that I think he can be. You know, I think he kind of got into his head when he lost that spot early.
Is his spot inside or outside? Is he a tackle or a guard, Cortland Ford?
You know, I think he's a tackle in college. I'd put him inside. He's just a massive human being, you know. But I think he's probably a tackle in college. So I'm really excited about what they got coming back. A year under the system, that system's going to grow. They're going to grow physically, mentally. And I think I think they've got something to prove, and again, I got a little bit inside because my kid I coach is playing there a little bit more than most, but I'm really excited about what they're doing. Coach Henson, like he's a really good coach, and talking ball with him for, like I said, 3.5, 4 hours the other day, and really like what his ideas and how to attack guys and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about them and what they can do as a unit, because it is a unit. If you have 4 really good guys and one guy's not very good, they all look bad. And so I think a lot of those guys have a chance to keep on playing when they're done. I think that's a huge positive. If they can handle, I guess the question is, how do they handle success? This old Bill Parcells, like every year is a new year. As good as, no matter what you ended up last year, if you won the Super Bowl or you won the national championship, it's a brand new team regardless. So how do they handle that success, and what kind of work are they putting in the off season? What are they doing in the weight room? Are they taking care of class? All those things that are super important to have a successful team.
All right, let's close it out with this. We're going to play a game. O-line or D-line? I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to tell me whether or not the right answer is offensive lineman or defensive line. All right, you ready? Obviously, we have one of each. All right, let's start with this. Who's smartest, O-line or D-line?
O-line, no doubt.
O-line.
Okay, we have an agreement. Okay, we're making an agreement on this one too. Most athletic, O-line, D-line?
DNs.
DNs.
All right, this one I think we'll make a disagreement on. Toughest, O-line, D-line?
O-line.
I would say that's an equal deal. O lineman probably going to play a lot through pain that a D lineman wouldn't. But they're both, especially the D tackles, getting blocks, high lows, different ways you can go. 3-on-1, you got the whole box you have to look at. But that's probably equal.
Okay. Who do you want with you in a scrap? O-line, D-line?
O-line, because there's going to be a bunch of guys with you.
Yeah, as a D lineman, if you ever got into a practice, let's go altercation, you were on your own. You'd have 9, 12 O linemen coming for you. Guys who are walk-on O linemen would take a shot at you. So it was fun.
Hardest to project when you're recruiting, offensive lineman or defensive lineman?
Like they're both a crapshoot.
Yeah, I would say the problem I see with like the projections is the 40 times and the athletic ability, the combine drills, and which is just great, except for that doesn't always translate into a great football player.
I would say it's D-line, because so many of us end up being tackles. I think that if you're going, and it kind of goes back to the more athletic. If I was a little bit more athletic, maybe I would have been able to play, D end a little bit longer. So yeah, that's a tough one.
All right. Who takes longest to coach up so they can get in and do a good job at the D1 level? Offensive line, defensive line?
O-line.
Agreed.
Is it because of the physical development, or because you need to learn assignments and work with your teammates?
When an O lineman messes up, the play goes bad real quick, and you know who it is. When a D lineman messes up, sometimes you don't see it. Linebacker, a DN, they can slant. Someone can make a play. So O lineman, it's very exposed, especially at the tackle position.
It's super technical too. Going from a lot of like these big recruits in high school are just so much more physically dominant than some of the D linemen they're going against. So I think it's really hard to project how they're going to fit in at the D1 level. And so learning the techniques, and obviously getting the strength, because you can be big and not strong. And so getting that strength and just getting that, I think every O lineman should redshirt, to be quite honest with you.
All right, last one. You get to choose. Your football team is either going to be dominant on the offensive line or dominant on the defensive line. Which one do you choose?
I think you can win games easier with a great defense than you can a great offense.
Defense is, as much as I hate to say it, defense wins championships. But if you have a bad O-line, I mean, if you have a good O-line and a dominant D-line, that'd be the best way to go.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Listen, I appreciate you you joining me today, and it's nice to hear from you guys. And I said at the outset, I was and I told Carrier and Leggett this too. I was in high school when you guys were playing in the late '80s, and those were some of my favorite teams of all time, and some of my favorite games still. '87 UCLA game, the '88 Oklahoma game, 20-0 at halftime against OU, which I don't think many people thought that would happen. Still some of my favorite games. So it's been a real pleasure to talk to you guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep.